Welcome to all the guests, all the participants. Strathmore University Business School is very delighted to host you to this webinar session we are going to have today. The title of our session today is Kenya's Critical Information Infrastructure. And it's a conversation that's part of an ongoing series trying to appreciate Kenya's digital economy. Building on an event and webinar we had a few weeks ago that focused on Kenya's digital economy blueprint. And today's conversation is a further investigation of what this digital economy means, not only for Kenya, but for the rest of the African continent, given that Kenya has been selected to pioneer the concept of a digital economy and try and create a blueprint for the rest of the African continent to explore what it means to excel in cyberspace. We are very privileged today to be hosting a high-level panel of distinguished guests, individuals who have enormous knowledge and experience operating not only in cyberspace, but trying to understand different dimensions of the digital economy from a public sector perspective, from a private sector perspective, and an academic perspective. I'm very delighted to recognize the presence of Honorable Principal Secretary, the Ministry of Information Communications, Telecommunications, Technology, Innovation, and Youth, Mwana Jerome Ocheng, who will be our keynote speaker later today. We are privileged to have several representatives. They'll be introduced during the respective panel sessions. Ms. Mudeu, karibu sana. Bwana Abdul Hakim, karibu sana. Madam Wende, karibu sana. Madam Sarah, karibu sana. And our very own John Sergon and Morioki Mureithi, along with our Deputy Executive Dean, Dr. Angela Ndunge. With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Angela Ndunge to engage the participants as we begin this webinar session. Dr. Ndunge, karibu sana. I'll just confirm your connection is clear.
Martin, can you see me and can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you. I'll hand over to you. And you will also welcome our chief guest for the keynote remarks, Karibu Sana, and you can welcome our audience on behalf of Strathmore University Business School. Over to you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Thank you so much for making time to be here, to be part of this important conversation. As we are all aware, of course, the world has continued to witness a tremendous increase in the use of digital technology in many ways that we had imagined, but we had not imagined that we would be urged or nudged to move very fast in this digital transformation space, especially after during this period of the pandemic. And we are beginning to, of course, to realize and to see the impact or technology is obviously erasing physical boundaries more and more. And we are beginning to see now a greater interest and more efforts in terms of trying to see how can we protect the cyberspace given the new challenges that are being presented by us working in this new ways in the digital world. So it's against this backdrop that Strathmore has been working together with people from industry to see how can we be part of the solutions. Of course, designing executive programs, which we are offering, but also looking at how we can engage industry experts through forums like this, as well as encourage our students to research in this particular area, even as we grow, and provide cutting-edge information that can also inform policy and strategy around the cyberspace area. So we are definitely delighted to have you here, and I would like to thank the panelists who have graciously accepted to be part of us this morning. And we look forward to having a wonderful conversation. And I also want to take the opportunity to just also recognize the faculty team led by Mr. John Segon. We also have Muriuki Morevi and Martin Maya here, who have been working behind the scenes to ensure we have this series going on. And just as you're starting the conversations, I'm sure there'll be a lot to learn, and we look forward to engaging further. This event, of course, is hosted under our Institute of Public Policy and Governance. And within that institute, we carried out numerous researches in this area, and we have also been honored not just to train here in Kenya, but even to extend to Rwanda, and we are seeing how we can offer the same in Uganda and Tanzania. So definitely this is a critical conversation, and I believe the lessons that we are learning here in Kenya, we can also see how we can share them with our African neighbors. So with those few remarks, I would like to just declare this webinar session open, and welcome you on behalf of Strathmore University. And now allow our keynote speaker, Mr. Jerome Ochieng, the PS of the State Department of ICT and Innovation, now to take center stage and give his keynote address. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Angela, for the brief introduction. Apologies, I will not be able to put on the screen because I want to maximize on the bandwidth that is available, so that I'm not in the office. I'm working somewhere in the field. We always call it the field. But I know colleagues John Sergon and Muriuki Mureithi can confirm that I more or less look like what is on the image there.
Indeed, we can confirm, Buenos.
Thank you. Very good. All right, thank you very much, and good to see you again. We are the old hands in this industry. Thank you, Strathmore Business School, for the invitation to grace this occasion to discuss an important aspect within the digital transformation agenda of our country today. I welcome this opportunity to use this platform to share knowledge and insight on this subject matter with fellow participants, experts, faculty members, and the public in general. As you are all aware, Kenya prides itself as one of the leading countries in the African continent in digital innovation and transformation. The inherent opportunities in the ICT sector continues to drive the country's development agenda and have been recognized as such by the government through a variety of interventions, including establishment of various legal and institutional mechanisms and colossal investments in ICT infrastructure, all aimed at stimulating growth in this sector. A robust, resilient, and reliable ICT infrastructure is the foundation for any meaningful digital transformation to occur. ICT infrastructure is the underpinning platform for digital advancement in all sectors, including education, health, manufacturing, as well as social integration and equality. Digital solutions rely on sound and robust ICT infrastructure as the foundation for reliability, security, and user centricity, and also provides the confidence required for a vibrant and thriving innovation ecosystem. Therefore, digitization brings together resources and systems across different fields, technologies, and disciplines. As such, critical information infrastructure must be understood not through the lens of ICT-related functions only, but also those which support or facilitate other public service delivery initiatives whose damage or interference could cause serious repercussions to public health or ruin the economy of the country. These include water, energy, rail, and road networks, whose operation is now more than ever before digitally or running on digitally enabled systems. Risks to critical information infrastructure can be attributed to man-made attacks, such as cybersecurity threats, sabotage, vandalism, or even accidental damage, natural disasters such as adverse weather patterns, or in some cases, technical failures. Therefore, the high dependency on critical information infrastructure, their interconnectedness, their interdependency raise the need to address their security and resilience in a very systematic manner. It is against this background that the Kenya government enacted the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act 2018, which specifically addresses the key legal issues surrounding Kenya's critical information infrastructure. The Act recognizes the need to identify, classify, and protect national critical information infrastructure against any dilapidating impact arising from their unavailability or compromised integrity, and also it establishes a governance mechanism through the National Computer and Cybercrime Coordinating Committee. The Act further aims to protect the confidentiality, integrity, availability of computer systems, programs, and data, as well as facilitating the prevention, detection, investigation, prosecution, and punishment of cybercrimes. The enactment of this law was as a result of recognition by government that critical information infrastructure involves many sectors and actors from both the public and private sector, and as such, there was need for a single overarching legal framework that encompasses all the action areas. The Critical Information Infrastructure Act, therefore, establishes a coherent legal framework for the prevention, preparedness, and consequence management of the inherent risks to our critical information infrastructure. Prior to the commencement of the Act, the Bloggers Association of Kenya filed petition 206 of 2018 at the High Court, challenging the constitutionality of 26 section of this Act. Some of the salient provisions that were suspended covered the composition of the National Computer and Cybercrime Coordination Committee and also the establishment of certain offices. The High Court suspended the contested section on 30th of May 2018, and the suspension was lifted on 20th February 2020 when the High Court dismissed the petition and the Act came into full force and effect. Let me emphasize the fact that I know there has been question, I think maybe for people who've not been following up our follow-up issues with the courts, is that we later went back to court, and now from February 20th, the High Court dismissed the petition that was challenging the Computer and Cybercrime Act, and now the Act is fully in force. Other policy and legal instruments also highlight the protection of critical information infrastructure as key to our economic development, key among them the Digital Economy Blueprint, the National Broadband Strategy, together with our National ICT Policy. With these few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to declare this webinar officially opened and really look forward to an insightful session and a discussion from both industry experts and the academia. Thank you very much and wishing you all the best.
Thank you very, very much, Bwana PS. As you had mentioned before, we're very, very delighted. Having been worked even for myself together with you for many, many years. I'm very delighted that you are able to join us this morning. So I will move on straight on to introduce the other members of the panelists who have joined us today. And we want to say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. We have Mr. Abdul Hakim from the Commissioner at the Global Commission on Cyberspace Stability, who is also the chair of the Working Group on Cyber Incident Management and Critical Information Protection of Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, as well as the chair of the African Union Cybersecurity Expert Group. Please say hello to the team.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Abdul Hakim Ajijora, a friend of mine all the way from Nigeria, very well versed around the world with a lot of focus on cyberspace. And today he'll be telling us how we ensure a resilient and robust cyberspace. So welcome, Abdul. We'll be inviting you later to make a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, with us also is Matheus Kimura. Matheus Kimura. Yes, please. Matheus Kimura is coming from a legal background and has worked in Kenya and also in US in the legal area with a lot of focus again on cyberspace, regulatory aspects. She has also worked on matters around cybersecurity and also anti-money laundering. All this allowed ensuring a secure cyberspace and creating the necessary legal and regulatory infrastructure to support a resilient cyberspace. So Matheus, can you just say hi?
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you very much. We'll be hearing more from her shortly. We also have Mwana De Geraini, an engineer of long standing, doing a lot of work in Kenya with the Communication Authority. But today she comes here in the context of a great and very important work at International Telecoms Union in a working group that has been working around developing standards about the stability of our telecommunication infrastructure, focusing on Africa. And today I want her to share, she'll be sharing with us that experience, that knowledge, and how it applies to critical information infrastructure. What can we learn? And perhaps also for us in the academia, what do we need to do? What areas are available for us to continue investigating and researching on CII? John?
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, apologies. I think this is critical. Critical infrastructure, apologies. So yeah, sorry, Mudioki, you were saying, yeah, you were inviting the first panelist, right?
Yes, just inviting. So the last one is, I would like to invite is Sarah Kabahuma. Yeah, we have worked with Sarah. She's working with the IACO, East African Communication Organization, which brings together all the countries of Eastern African region. And what she'll be sharing with us is what is the status of CII? How are our countries in the neighborhood? How are they responding to the call for CII? And from there, we want to see what lessons can we learn. So Sarah, can you say hi for people to hear you?
Hello, good morning, everyone. And I'm glad to be here. And thanks to Strathmore University for putting this together. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I forgot to do the same thing for Mwana. Mwana, just say hi.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Good morning, Mwana.
Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Okay, now I hand over to John.
Yeah, I think basically you've given each panelist an area to look for, to focus on. So I'll go straight on to Abdul Hakim from Abuja, Karibu sana. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Let me quickly just share my screen. And okay, so Mr. Jerome Ocheng, faculty and staff of Strathmore University, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be invited just to share some of my thoughts with you, and I look forward also to learning. So jumping straight in, who will protect digital Kenya? Indeed, who will protect digital Africa? The African cybersecurity market in 2020 was estimated at about $2.3 billion US, and it's expected to rise to about 3.6 to 4.5 billion over the next couple of years. And some analysts estimate that the African cybersecurity market will hit 15 to 30 billion within 10 years. And as the lawyers amongst us will say, I put it to you, what percentage of that market will be for Kenya? We need to consider cybersecurity not just as a challenge, but also possibly a societal profit center, not simply a cost center. And I know that people like Mr. Ocheng will look at cybersecurity as an opportunity for job creation, for wealth generation, and as a byproduct, tax revenue generation. One other issue that is of interest to us this morning will be that the ISC Squared did a survey back in 2020, and they estimated that the global cybersecurity human resource shortage has hit 3.1 million vacancies. Again, this is an opportunity for us across Africa and particularly in Kenya. We know that we have people with the brains. It's more a situation of building their capacity, which I'm happy to see organizations like Strathmore are beginning to address, and also empowering them. And this is so that our youth, if they must emigrate, can be a respected diaspora rather than dying in the desert or dying, crossing the Mediterranean. And so we must overproduce. Now, when we look directly at the CIPP or CIIP, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise has just released a paper, and you will bear with me that I will share it with you after the 18th, because at this point in time, we're just doing the finishing touches, but this is drawn from this. And really, we look at an overarching capacity framework for critical information infrastructure, issues such as strategy, protection capacity, and incident management, as well as the evaluation and development of related capacities. Now, first and foremost, obviously, with CII, we have to basically identify the critical infrastructure, and then within that, identify the critical information infrastructure. We have to look at what kind of CII governance we would have. We have to determine the structure. How will public-private partnerships be organized, bearing in mind that much of the technical infrastructure for CI or CII is actually owned by the private sector, such as the telecommunications network. And then we have to look at the choices, and this really depends on the specifics of Kenya in terms of its relevant shareholder risk profile and its ability to mitigate those risks. So when we now look at the approach, many countries have taken different kinds of approaches. In the Netherlands, they've had an all hazards approach. Singapore has had a much more centralized approach, while Austria has had a decentralized approach. But I must emphasize, colleagues, that we need to move beyond the sectors and focus on the dependencies, because it may not be the whole sector that is actually critical. It may be some specific components, but it is how those components impact or basically support other sectors. In terms of the protection capacities, we really need to look at risk management to determine the measures needed to protect specific operations. Also, in terms of incident management, it's very crucial that we are able to conduct regular drills. And as a matter of interest, the OIC CERT, of which I'm one of the founding members, is having its cyber drill coming on in September. Applications are on now. If Kenya would like to participate, I'm more than welcome. I'll be more than happy to facilitate. Now, in terms of the UN framework, basically there are 4 components: international law. So basically, international law applies to cyberspace, full stop. They've so far articulated about 7 norms. They look at confidence building measures and also cyber capacity building. The key takeaway here is that these norms developments, they are soft laws. They are expected over time to evolve into hard international law. And therefore, I think it is very important and critical that Africa and countries specifically like Kenya develop or promote a cadre of cyber diplomats to ensure that African priorities perspectives are properly ensconced or factored into at the foundation into these evolving cyber relationships. At the Global Commission for the Stability of Cyberspace, we had also developed a number of norms and across a spectrum. So basically, there are some norms that are critical of cyberspace. That is, they are necessary for cyberspace to function. And there are other norms that are critical in cyberspace in terms of the utilization of cyberspace. So very quickly, the first norm we issued was the norm to protect the public core. In this case, the public core is not public sector, but in terms of public commons. So basically, without prejudice to their rights and obligations, state and non-state actors. We brought in non-state actors because the UN tends to focus exclusively on state actors, should not knowingly conduct or allow activity that intentionally and substantially damages the general availability and integrity of the public core. Today, Africa is witnessing this exact kind of problem, and that is the situation with Afrinic. And this is something that actually has potential for profound impact on Africa's internet capabilities. So I would urge all of us to look into that situation and see how best we can assist Afrinic and by extension Africa to resolve these problems. Also, at the other end of the spectrum, we had a norm for the protection of the electoral infrastructure. And I'm sure, being from Kenya, you will know that Kenya itself has had some challenges in these areas. And so I'm sure you would appreciate probably much better than any other country the importance of this norm. Now, in moving forward, when we look at these norms, of course, these are at a very high level. They are generally international, maybe they are continental. And so we have to look at ways to domesticate. And so this framework for domestication, we have to look at a particular norm in the context of the East African community, and as well as the AU, and of course, in terms of the context of Kenya. And we need to look at the tactics, the tools, and the procedures related thereto. Within that context, we also have to research into examples of good practice, and then try to establish what are the proper benchmark questions that Kenya needs to ask and basically give itself that kind of direction. I would also like to just touch on another critical information infrastructure. Our women, our sisters, our girls. I think no country, no society is going anywhere if it does not leverage 50% of its population. This is our women. But also, sadly, in Africa, we also do not leverage another 47% of the population, which is our male youth. So between women and youth, certainly we are not doing very well, but it also presents itself as an opportunity, growth and progress. As I wind down, in terms of the way forward, we need to look at the people, the processes, and the technology, because no one else is going to make Africa better unless we do. So again, as the lawyers would say, who is going to protect the digital African? If not you and I, then whom? We do need a generation of these cyber diplomats, maybe some people in the audience. The UNODA has actually developed at least an introductory online course. It's free, you get a certificate. It's something I would urge you to look at. We must work together to develop continental, regional, and indeed national capacities. I would also ask us to open our minds to some of these new areas in terms of data privacy compliance, predictive analytics. If you are inclined to join the military, you now need to look at mosaic warfare and mimetic warfare.
Abdul,
and in whatever you are doing, a few more seconds, sir. In whatever you are doing, please always factor the underserved, unserved, and unborn, because they are not at the table today yet. Tomorrow, they must live with the decisions that we make today. Asante, thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Abdul. This is great to see all that stuff from cyberspace. So I'll jump right into the next speaker, Matheus Kimura. You will give us, I think Marieke had mentioned, because of your extensive knowledge on drafting laws and regulations, we would like to hear your, to share with us the role of ICT infrastructure in enabling operationalization of such laws and regulations, and also you can inform the participants your own legal opinion regarding what the peers had said, also the Kenya's computer misuse and cybercrime laws in this area of critical information infrastructure. Karibu, Matheus.
Good morning. I agree fully. Sorry, I'm having a problem with my screen. Right there. I'm just going to jump right into it and look at the critical information infrastructure legal framework we have in Kenya. As Bonasias had said earlier, this is set out in our Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, which sets out some substantive provisions as regards what is CI. And CI is basically, as Bwana Giola had spoken about, is what is critical, what is necessary, what can impact on our socio-economic and national security aspects. So Section 9 of our Act goes and details what we as Kenya deem critical infrastructure. And it also enumerates that the director of the National Computer and Cybercrimes Coordination Committee would designate certain structures in Kenya as being critical information infrastructure. And once he does that, he can actually issue directives that they're obliged to comply with, which could pertain to classification of data, cybersecurity incident management, disaster contingency and recovery measures, minimum physical and technical security measures, and the list is not, continues on and on. Now, at Section 10 of our Act, this sets out the steps to be taken to secure the designated CII. And this includes carrying out assessments of the threats, the vulnerabilities, the risks, and the probability of a cyber attack. We also need to determine what's the harm to the economy that would happen if these systems were damaged or somebody had unauthorized access to them. We also need to measure our overall preparedness to deal with such a situation, as well as give guidance to how our CII can be secured. Due to the importance of CII to our nation's socioeconomic and national security interests, it's imperative that the people who are designated as CII know who to respond to should an attack occur. And this is where Section 11 comes in, because it briefly sets out what I call the emergency preparedness plan, i.e. who to contact and what information to share, the type of breach and the action being taken to contain it. As Bwana Giola also stated, a lot of our CII is in the private sector. So the law taking cognizance of this had to set up a legal mechanism for the private and the public sector to be able to share information as regards CII. And this is now where Section 11 empowers these entities to share information, and it sets out what information they cannot share. Like, for example, they cannot reveal the identity of a person not connected to the CII threat, nor can they share the health status of a person unless they give their consent. However, what they can share is anything pertaining to CII that ensures our cybersecurity, pertains to investigations and prosecutions of cybercrimes, protects the life and property of an individual, and secures the national security interests of the Republic. Finally, Section 13 sets out the modalities to ensure CII are audited regularly to ensure that they're in compliance. And these audits are mandatory. A designated CII cannot hinder or obstruct it. If they do, then they're likely to face a penalty of up to 200,000 Kenya shillings or 5 years in prison or both. So we now know what CI is, but why do we need to secure it? COVID has enhanced digital transformation, but with enhancing digital transformation, and even as Africa and Kenya being one of the big three together with Nigeria and South Africa on the tech stage, we have a challenge because we've increased our attack surface to cyber criminals, and yet our systems are still a little bit vulnerable. Such that these days, and it's not just in Kenya, it's even on the global stage, a single click on a keyboard can bring our country to a standstill. For example, what if M-Pesa was maliciously shut down? The country, the region, and indeed the global stage, who are connected through the Western Union money transfer systems, where the diaspora remits a lot of money to the economy, would be grievously harmed. This could actually be considered an act of war against the Republic of Kenya. What if our GOK IFMIS, which is our integrated financial markets information systems, or our e-citizen portals, were attacked by internet desperados? That could bring the systems in the country to a standstill. What if our newly commissioned Lamu port, or our high traffic Mombasa port, which not just serves Kenya, but the interior region, neighboring countries who are coastless? What if that was hacked? I mean, we can also look at what happened in the US. There was a Colonial Pipe hack where a single password brought down the largest US fuel pipeline and literally brought the East Coast to almost a standstill. And due to this, I think about 2 days ago, the US Coast Guard actually issued a new update to their strategic policy on how to secure those kind of things. And this new outlook focuses on securing tech that enables maritime commerce. And this is because due to increased automation and tech used to enable all these global shipping and other features, the gross attack surface for hackers has increased. So applying this locally, we need to look at how we can secure our maritime, our industrial, our health sectors, our financial sectors, I mean, energy, you name it, we need to secure that critical information because it can be easily attacked. And I know Mr. Jola raised this, and it's funny, we were thinking along the same lines, because I also say, what's if next year, the day before our general elections, the elections electronic systems were brought down? God help us all, you know. So this shows you the dangers of unsecured critical information infrastructure. And like I said, the list is not exhausted, nor am I giving internet desperados ideas of how to bring us down. But these are things that we need to look at to secure ourselves. I'm briefly going to also discuss some of the challenges Kenya faces and how we can overcome them. Once again, this list is not exhausted. Given time, I could go on for hours and hours. This is an area I'm passionate about. One of the challenges is, as the Bonapias had mentioned, we have our Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act now fully operational. And however, we have not yet activated our National Computer and Cybercrimes Coordination Committee, nor have we appointed the director. And without them in place, it's basically not enabling us to be effective in implementing our critical CII laws legal framework, because laws on paper can only be effective if they're implemented. Another challenge I'd look at is that we need to develop a more comprehensive CI emergency response preparedness plan as a nation and even as a region, so that in case of an attack of our CII, each party involved knows exactly who to reach out to 24/7, 365. What their role is in thwarting it and containing the attack. All the relevant response teams need to be fully appraised of what they need to do, so that everybody knows their roles. Because we don't want to have a repeat of what happened with the famous Bangladesh SWIFT central bank heist, where the North Korean hackers navigated the global banking system using administrative loopholes and time zone differences to execute a well-planned transfer of millions. In fact, they wanted to drain the central bank's cash reserves, which at that point were about $1 billion. But they got away with about $81 million, which is still on record as one of the largest cyber bank heists. So we need to have an emergency response plan, because Bangladesh, what happened there was that when the Fed Reserve was trying to get in touch with Bangladesh, they were not awake, the other way around, so it took time. And in cyberspace, speed is of the essence because attribution is a challenge. The third challenge, and I think Wanajiola also touched on this a bit, is that many African states are vulnerable in part because we rely on a limited number of partners to build our tech stacks. For example, 70% of the 4G base stations in Africa are made by one Chinese company, Huawei, which is also poised to dominate the 5G market. In fact, Safaricom last year said that they were going to use Huawei for 5G. This, in my opinion, is a significant problem. It gives control over our critical information infrastructure to an external power that could theoretically shut that infrastructure down or introduce hard to detect exploits and other vulnerabilities through the supply chain. The Chinese hackers secretly redirected footage of the African Union headquarters so that they could view them abroad. And this has been reported in the cyber circles as being part of a larger pattern by them to electronically infiltrate our key communication infrastructures in Africa. In Kenya, China is our biggest creditor. If we don't pay our loans on time, maybe they can shut down our systems. We don't know if they are lurking in the background. So this is a challenge, but as a lawyer, I like to have a solution. So what is the solution? Rather than rely on one single foreign partner to supply our end-to-end critical information infrastructure, Kenya and indeed African countries should utilize a diverse slate of foreign tech suppliers, ensure the co-location of data centers, and support local tech innovation. This can reduce reliance on one system or supply and provide Kenya and indeed African governments with leverage over their partners as they seek to develop local capacity and build threat detection, monitoring, and response capabilities. Finally, the final challenge I'm going to look at as I wind up my presentation is kind of similar-ish. And this is that Kenya and indeed Africa's largest cloud companies are mostly multinational technology companies. The lack of authentic domestic participation is a developmental dilemma that must be taken seriously, and it needs to be urgently addressed. Increased localization of data centers is necessary for Kenya and indeed Africa as a matter of national security. This is because information security guidelines instruct that repositories of critical information must reside in one's domain. As Africans, our data and information is stored in foreign data centers, exposing us to cyber espionage and cyber attacks. Let's assume that Kenya takes a political posture that is not favorable to a global superpower like the US or China. Hostile to this position, the global superpower then instructs an information embargo against Kenya, thus directly impacting Kenyan data and information housed in data centers within their jurisdiction. This cyber warfare tactic can easily be deployed to deny both the government and businesses in Kenya access to services and critical data information. So that's why we need to look as a nation and as a region to begin to own our own tech. Let's become independent. In addition, and finally, as I wind up, as we talk about cloud security, we should also look to learn from the EU GAIAX, which is a set of rules and open architecture for cloud providers. The EU GAIAX looks to become the global standard for cloud computing, just like the GDPR is for data protection. And it wants the next generation of safe and secure to be, wants to be the next generation of a safe and secure data infrastructure, where the new generation of cloud has to have a new model. It has to be decentralized and federated. And I'm sure we can do this on the African continent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Matheus. This is much more scarier than scary than I thought.
It's good. That's my job. My job is to scare you so that we can secure our nation.
Right. I can imagine what could happen in this country if M-Pesa wasn't working. I don't think we can last 15 minutes before we think of things. And I can see Abdul is smiling there because that is very true. So thank you very much for keeping time. I'm going to jump on right to our next speaker, panelist, who is Mwana De Geraini. And Mwana, please, would like you to share some definitions that of CII from a technical perspective, the broad components and the institutional frameworks as proposed by ITU. We'll also like you to look at best practice standards from ITU point of view, and then also possible areas of academic research. So without much ado, karibu sana, Mwana.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you so much, Matheus and Abdul, Hakim. Thank you. I mean, what you have spoken about is really it, that actually if time on the cyberspace is just seconds, it's very critical that we have everything right. So, yeah. So we are currently, hopefully you can see my screen that, we are enjoying the Olympics right now, and anything on the cyberspace cannot be done if we are not a team, if we are not coordinated. And as Hakim has said, I like that the idea that you have even emphasized that the unborn need to be, taken care of and considered. And what I see in this picture, first of course, is the Kenyan team. And it's, as I said, the need for coordination. There's a person who is a flag bearer who, as Matheus has indicated, there needs to be a convening agent. And in Kenya right now, we don't have that convening agent. In the event that there's a cyber attack, who as I said, God forbid, when we are just about to cast our votes next year, that the internet goes down on the electoral system. So who is this flag bearer, the national convener, the person who says, okay, you people do, I do this, you do this, and everything is very well coordinated in a very short period of time. So the other thing is that each one of us, and as a team here, one is a swimmer, one is a marathon runner, one is an 800-meter runner, one is an archer. Each one of us has different roles. And I hope that with time, that committee, as referenced in the Cybercrime Act, can be put together so that everyone is clear about what they are supposed to do. And with that, then you have a winning combination to ensure that when an attack does happen, then we know who's doing what their capabilities are, we've done the assessment prior to the attack happening. So I'm currently, trying to put together I would say trying to put together, because participation of African member states in, the whole standardization process is very limited. So there's really no, a standard for critical information infrastructure, but there are standards for components of the critical infrastructure, whether it is in terms of the electric grid, which is a smart grid. So I'm sure the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, is doing something about it. IEEE is also doing something, or there are different components. So there, and also even when you look at ISO usually, comes up, you have procedures on how to do certain things, so that everyone is guided in the event, as Matheus has said, of an attack. everybody knows this is the plan. There are probably even ISO procedures guiding the process. There's also the IETF, which is more involved in actually the standardization of critical infrastructure in terms of the internet. So you're talking about the domain name system, you're talking about IPv6, which is the naming process. So all those that are so critical to the functioning of the internet are probably, in terms of standardization, are managed in different standardization organizations. So I'm here speaking on behalf of.
By the way, Wendy, are we able to see you?
Oh, my apologies. Sorry. My apologies.
Right, and while you are coming in, so I'm eating into your time, I would like to encourage participants, please use the question and answer sessions. To write your questions.
Okay. Oh, I wasn't aware. I was wondering why I was blank. But anyway.
So.
Okay, so yeah, so the International Telecommunications Union actually has different sectors. What we refer to as sectors. There's a development sector, there's the radio communication sector, and there's a telecom sector. So currently, there's the ITUT, that's the standardization standardization but there is what they call study groups, and there's a study group that deals with security, which is study group 17. And under study group 17, we have a regional group for Africa, and I would say in terms of participation, it is lacking. Why? Probably the capacity. And thank you, Abdul Hakim, for just emphasizing the need that there's need for us to start, the young people, the women who need to and are already participating, heavily participating. Actually, they are the main, the beneficiaries of the internet, can then be involved to ensure that when we have, there's context, because that's a word that's missing. Standardization takes place all over the world in these different standardization development organizations. But in terms of context, does it apply to Africa? You remember when I saw that when the UK, I believe, or Boeing was doing the Concorde, was it Airbus Concorde? But they had to do acclimatization for tropical regions and flew it to Nairobi, Kenya at the time. This is a view of the world and countries that have national cybersecurity strategies. This is from the ITU. Actually, most work in terms of critical information infrastructure at the ITU is being done by the development sector, not the standardization sector. So as I said, because different components of, there are different components to the critical information infrastructure, which have varying standards. But in terms of the strategy, which is guided by the government, by the national government, this, as you can see clearly, Africa is lacking. So where there's purple, there is a strategy in place, and these strategies are available. And there was a mention of the need for benchmarking. So if you can go into these sectors, but the thing is, you cannot copy and paste. Why? Is because there's the context in which you're applying. So what may be critical for Kenya may not apply to be critical in the US. So I was looking at the US, they have what they call, it's the acronym CISA, sorry. And one of the issues that they have probably identified, as a procedure is for schools. They have had challenges in active shooter events. So they have considered this probably as a critical infrastructure to them. They also have the chemical industry. So what applies to them as critical does not really apply to us. So actually, in my interaction with my colleagues at the ITU, and I said, what is it that is critical to, if I was to put it in a Kenyan context, and they're like, we don't know. It's you who decides. And probably, we could decide for us, it's our people. It's, the Olympic team that you saw. for us, when we run the marathon, it's so critical. It affects our psychological, because actually at the end of the day, when, as you said, when M-Pesa goes down and I'm not able to buy my vegetables or, fuel the car, or that affects my psychological, it just puts a damp on the day. So it's important to recognize that you really cannot take what is critical infrastructure in one country to another. And that's why in terms of national cybersecurity strategies, they are quite different. So recognizing that, then the ITU really does not say this is what you need to do, or this is not what you need to do, or this, so they have guides and toolkits. So there's recently the guide for developing the national cybersecurity strategy, and gives different areas that countries need to consider for inclusion into your strategy. And there's a section there on critical information infrastructure. So the other one is the toolkit, the ITU National Cybersecurity Self-Assessment Toolkit. Surprisingly, this is, when I looked it up, it's 2009. So again, saying that it's up to you as a country, up to Kenya as a country, Nigeria, Rwanda, Uganda, to actually develop your strategy, identifying what is critical to yourself, and then putting together, the teams that you need to protect yourself, understand, sorry about that. Yeah, the teams that you need to have in place to be able to protect yourself and to make sure there's continuity in terms of the life and the society. Okay, so yes, capacity development has been mentioned, and which is fantastic because I see most, organizations are offering capacity development for free. So that the same case applies for ITU. So there's actually this ITU Academy. There's an ITU Academy, and you can register courses. And one particular one that is relevant to what we are speaking to is the life cycle principles, good practice on national cybersecurity strategy development and implementation, which is actually available now until the end of the year. Then what a strategy that the ITU has put in place on the basis of what the leading, what we call the plenipotentiary, the resolutions at the ITU level have recognized that there's little participation of African member states or countries or developing countries. So there's the bridging the standardization gap, which always occurs, when there is a session of the ITU, there are newcomer sessions, and the same applies to other standards developing organizations, so that you have, a place where, like the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, also has, sessions for policymakers, to begin with, newcomer sessions, because standardization is actually a very detailed and time-consuming process. It takes a lot of time to come up with whatever they call as resolutions or recommendations or standards. So, but there has been a recognized need that there's African countries or developing countries need capacity development in participating in the standardization work. So an area that I was asked to speak to was what research areas do we need to consider? And I thought of the ones that are on your screen, that there's need to. Okay, just the last slide, vulnerability assessment, so risk analysis and threat modeling. So if we then, carry out this, then we can decide that, for example, wildlife in Kenya is critical infrastructure. So because we have identified if we lose all our elephants or our our greatest economic, sector, which is tourism, is then gone. So you can then identify. I know we're talking about internet, but all these things. If we are recently carrying out, a check on how many, like counting in terms of our wildlife, and maybe we put IoT devices, sensors on lions, elephants, etc. So if those are hacked, etc., what would be the repercussions? So just assessing the risk, vulnerabilities, and then okay, I guess I've already spoken to the impact and the consequences. And then also there is the need to, yes, that is a critical infrastructure, but is it owned by government? Probably not. Most of them are owned by private sector. Then how are you giving incentives, or how is the government going to put in money to Safaricom or another, to Kenya Wildlife Services to invest more to protect what has been identified as critical infrastructure? So there's need for investment, we can research on that. Then of course the geopolitical, which has already been mentioned, the impact, and I guess Sarah will be speaking to that because of the East African community. And then what disruptive technologies for critical information infrastructure protection, can we consider new technologies that are coming up to actually protect what we have? So these are areas I thought that we could probably consider in terms of research. So with that, I say thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity.
John, just
Right.
before you get Sarah,
Right.
just to mention to the panelists that our chat room is very active, and also the question and answer platform very busy. I see Abdul is very busy also responding to some of them. So I invite Matheus, I invite the others to join also, and perhaps start addressing some of the issues. Some of them may have to be, you may have to answer them verbally later on, but if you can be able to answer them online, welcome. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Mariuki, and thanks for activating that. So last but not least is Sarah, all the way from Kampala, Uganda. And Sarah, karibu sana. Please share with the participants. Sarah, for those of you who do not capture this, it works for East Africa Communications Organizations, and she's involved in harmonizing policy developments and advancement of the ICT sector within the East African region. So Sarah, we would like to share the role of harmonization of the frameworks for CII in East African region. Also, let us know the efforts and status in the region on implementation of the CII. We saw a little bit earlier how Africa is lagging behind. And then of course, lessons learned in the implementation of the processes. Karibu sana, Sarah.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to, again, Strathmore for putting this together. I hope I can organize my thoughts properly, because I have a number of things I want to talk about. Firstly, thank you for the introduction. I'm from EACO. EACO is East Africa Communications Organization. We are a regional body with our headquarters in Kigali, and we work to strengthen and promote cooperation among the 6 EAC countries in the ICT space, particularly looking at the subsectors of broadcasting, postal, and telecom. And as John mentioned, one of the key issues one of our key objectives is for policy harmonization. What is it that we can do together as a region? I'm a strong advocate for regional integration. I think for us to move forward as a continent, as countries, I think we need to work together need to collaborate and collectively work together. The topic of CII is very important, and I think it's a very important aspect in the ICT ecosystem. A lot of conversations are going on, especially now with the COVID-19, is to bridge the digital divide. How do we expand networks? How do we ensure our people are connected? We've realized there's such a big gap. And then also there's a lot of dependencies as we are moving forward on the digital technologies. But as we build these networks, as we build these systems, what is it that we're doing to ensure that protection is at the forefront of the work that we are doing? I'll just give a brief status of what is happening in individual countries in regards to critical infrastructure management and protection, and also the CII. At individual level, different countries have different policies, and I think that's something Morioki wanted me to talk about. I will not mention all the 6 because I'll just mention those which have key things to look at. Uganda has a Computer Misuse Act, I think of 2011. They also have a National Information Security Policy. Rwanda has a National Cybersecurity Policy. Tanzania has a Cyber Crime Act of 2015. And Kenya, as the Cabinet Secretary mentioned, there's a Computer Misuse Act. And also there's a Critical Information Protection Bill. This just goes to show that at different levels within the region, it's appreciated that critical information infrastructure is important. Ensuring that there is security in the cyberspace is important. What I'm seeing as a missing link is it's at individual level. Each country is trying to do something, which is good. But I think to strengthen this, we can work regionally and globally as an East African community. At EACO, we've done a number of works, especially as I told you, we have worked towards policy harmonization. We've done a number of works to ensure that this is achieved. We have a vandalism guideline, something curbing the vandalism vice. We also, it was released in 2018. We also have something on IP-based practices for security. We also have a DNSEC guideline. So all these are just to ensure that we are holistically trying to ensure that there is security in the cyberspace. And we work in working groups. I'll not go through the details, but in one of our working groups, we are looking at how we can manage critical infrastructure. The first thing we did was to identify what are these critical infrastructures. And then I think through this year and maybe part of next year is look at the protection and management of the CII. That is something we are working on at one of the key areas we are handling at EACO. And also something else that's happening in the region is the response teams, the emergency response teams. I think this play a role in ensuring that critical infrastructure is protected and managed. And a number of the East African countries have their SAT set up. Kenya has, Tanzania, Uganda, and I think Rwanda. So for me, that is key in managing critical infrastructure. I was asked to talk about the role, I think the harmonization role. As I mentioned earlier, I think a harmonized approach for me is what will work. I think at a global, when I say global, I think maybe for our region, for the East African region. And this will also empower, trickle down to the individual countries. And as in our harmonization is to bring the countries together and work towards having a harmonized policy on how to manage CII. And as I mentioned, it's something we are working on. And of course, the process would involve a lot of benchmarking with those who are ahead, benchmarking with countries which have achieved, or those which are in the process, and also collect information from the region. What is it that we're doing and what are the loopholes and how can we put this together so that we have a guideline for the region? And I think that also speaks to the efforts. I think I've said efforts. We're working to ensure that we have something that the region can look at as a guide. Yeah. There are a number of challenges I see in here. I think one of them is, has been resonating throughout the other speakers, is there's a resource limitation. I think we have a resource limitation, capacity limitation in how we ensure that we are at the forefront as a region in managing CII. And also I think it's a complex matter, really. Yeah, it has a complexity as it is, yeah. And also one of our challenges is resources. I think there's a limitation of resources. There are many things I think we can't achieve because of the limitation of resources. And also, I think there's a policy gap. Yeah, there is a policy gap. I think one in ensuring compliance, ensuring follow-up for the countries which already have policies. Are they being, is CII being implemented? Is as it should be? So that's one, even though, and there are others which even don't have policies to start with. Yeah. And I think I like discussions such as this. They help us think out of the box. What is it that we're doing? What is it we can do better? And for me, the lessons learned for me is one, let's make this as a priority. As we build networks, as we ensure that the digital transformation takes root in our countries, let's make protecting critical infrastructure very important and put it at the forefront because the risk is high. Yeah, like was said, if M-Pesa went off, what would happen to the Kenyan economy? Not just Kenyan economy, but in Uganda, we also have a mobile money thing, Rwanda has, Tanzania have. If that system went down, what would happen to our economies? Looking at, for example, that many of our people do not have formal banking. Their banking is their mobile wallet. So for me, to make this a priority at regional level. And also learn and benchmark right. Yeah. Benchmark, because I see a number of works has been done globally. So as a region, let us benchmark and learn from those that are ahead. And I liked what Mwenda presented, the ITU strategy guidelines already there. Let's make use of these resources that are already available. And also, let's be involved, let's be active, and also build local capacity. Capacity enhancement for me is very, very key. And work towards the local innovators, yeah. And also partnerships. I think partnerships is something that we need to harness on, but that's one thing that will take us forward. Like was mentioned, some of these infrastructures are owned by private owners. So how does that work out with the government? So I think a lot of partnerships and collaborations have to be strengthened and also maybe properly documented. How does this partnership work? And also our SAT teams, our incident response teams have to be enhanced. Because I think this is key in managing critical infrastructure. And lastly, it's good governance. Yeah. I think good governance will come at the forefront of making sure that these things are become a reality. And in closing, I just want to mention, there's a lot of documentation and research going on having a single digital market. There was the free trade, I think the AU free trade policy that was passed. These are things that are happening. And how do we ensure that if we want to have a single digital market, we also have to have global or regional, I think, frameworks or policies or strategies that are enhancing these things to become a dream. If we want to have a single digital market for East Africa, how does it play out? So I think having policies speaking to having critical infrastructure in place for me is a key take home. Yeah. I think those are my few comments, and thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much. Sarah from Kampala, Uganda. So I want to, we are not going to move to another section. We are going to have our participants, but I just wanted first again to thank the panelists for very, very important insights, starting from Abdul all the way, talking about the global perspective of this CII. I was very impressed to hear this, Abdul, the value of this economy, the value in terms of, and what can we have? What is our portion as Kenyans? Then we heard about the legal areas. Matheus was talking to us about all these, what we're calling scary situations. Mwende, you've talked to us from the ITU, and now we have got the regional from SARA. So I want to thank all of you. I'm going to hand over to Morioki, my colleague, to look at what the participants have said. And then for about 10 minutes, And the questions will probably be specific to you or to specific panelists. Then I will also have a few minutes towards the end, maybe if each person about 3 to 4 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, just to summarize that. Mariuki, over to you.
Thank you, John. Allow me to just echo what you have said, to thank the panelists, because I can see they have really done a lot of background work to prepare for this, to share to Kenyans and also to the region, people who are listening to this session. Thank you very much for that effort. Thank you very much for that research. This is not in vain. It's making us really reflect. I like what Sarah said, think out of the box and really look at what is critical infrastructure in our country, Kenya, and also in any other country where we have participants coming from. And now the issues have been set out very, very clearly. I just want to reiterate that cyberspace is very critical. We had land as a domain, sea, we conquered air, we conquered, or we are still there, space and deep space. Now is the time for cyberspace. If we don't safeguard that infrastructure, then it means the experience of our new domain is compromised. And so what we have been talking about is this, the infrastructure that needs to enable us to continue experiencing cyberspace. And talking about its stability, about its resilience, and we have got it from the context of global, what is the thinking globally in trades, and also down to our region. So I'm also happy that we have participants who have been very active. They have been posing questions and also comments. And I see the panelists are also very active, responding to them. And we still have some few minutes. So should there be a question that you need to be clarified or addressed, please go ahead. In that session, I know we have been able to define CII, its importance, the experiences, governance issues, protection, and how we secure it, and also the arrangement of stakeholders, partnerships, and so forth. But I think there's also something that came out from there. How can we secure this technology, this infrastructure, if it's also dependent on where we are sourcing our technology? To what extent are we able to control or even have a say in the development of that technology? We also heard about the standards that perhaps how we can bring on those standards to help us to ensure a stable and resilient cyberspace at the national level. So there are some questions that have been posed, some have been answered, but I would like first of all to start with Ajola, Abdul. Perhaps we had some experiences from the region, East African region, where they are at. From Nigeria, what is the status? As you also look for any question that is in the platform that you may want to address. Thank you.
Okay. First and foremost, Nigeria has had a Cybercrime Act since 2015. We are actually looking towards trying to modify it and also add some other similar or related legislation. We also put in place our national cybersecurity policy and strategy back in 2014, 2015. And indeed, just in February 2021, the update, the refreshed update was approved by Mr. President. I happen to be the chair of the committee that put that in place. Nothing is perfect. One of the challenges that we have very immediately is that, and it's echoes of Kenya, and that is the institutional mechanism in Nigeria. It's supposed to be the National Cybersecurity Coordination Center. That is yet to be established, despite the fact that the policy and strategy is out. And so that's the institutional mechanism to drive that strategy. So that's a bit of a challenge for us. One of the things I would like to address from what I've been seeing online is that regulators, in the case of Nigeria, are actually going to be the people who will implement a lot of the cybersecurity activities, within the various sectors. And the challenge that one is beginning to see is that regulators urgently need to create safe spaces for reporting and discussion. What we see in some sectors is that the regulators are busy trying to impose fines for any misdemeanor, for any mistake. And in that context, if you are focused on the punishment, then you don't get the reports you want. I would also want to build on something Sarah has said, because I think it's very critical. I think this is a historic and unique opportunity. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is a unique and historic opportunity for African central banks to come together and create an Africa-wide digital currency. That's a whole seminar by itself, so I won't get into that. And Matheus talked about the challenges. I concur with her, but I would also like to say that each challenge is also a potential opportunity. But just to reinforce what she has said in terms of concerns, from my perspective, 50% of all smartphones across Africa are from China. 70% of the telecoms network is also
Abdul Hakim
in South Africa actually has an inbuilt chip which can be used as a digital wallet. That we can slide easily and gently, but it means that we are very, very dependent on these people. But the truth of the matter is that whether it's China or Europe or the US, they are essentially the same. Half a dozen of one, six of the other. So it's actually about how Africans can handle their own capacities to move forward and address their own challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mwende, just before I come to you about a question of standardization, you can see it on the platform. I want to talk to Matheus. You have experience working in outside Africa, US, and even the EU. What lessons can we learn as they have developed on their CII? What few lessons can we learn from them and implement in our region? Matheus?
Okay. Well, to start off, I'll pick up on something that Mwende highlighted, which was really true. We can learn from them, but we should not copy paste, because like the example she gave of what is CII there will not be critical infrastructure locally. However, there are some things we can take from them. They're like when I was talking about the cloud computing, what they're doing in the EU, trying to set up this new standard, the GAIAX. We all, when the EU issued the GDPR, we all went and copy pasted it into our legislations without even stopping to think that some of their regulations in the EU were not applicable locally. So we should look at what they're doing and we step up to that. The other thing which I think we need to do, and I'll say this even for Kenya, and I'm sure it's across the board, across the African nations, we need to have agencies, specific agencies within each jurisdiction that focuses purely on cyberspace policy and critical infrastructure protection. It should not be just one department of a ministry. It actually needs to be a standalone agency, because as we're embracing digital transformation, these issues are becoming more and more important to us. And this has been done in the West, in the US and in the EU, where they have their own standalone agencies who are able to focus purely on that. So those are some of the things we can learn from them. But I'd also just like to add something that Mr. Adjola spoke about us. Yes, it's true. Challenges become opportunities. And that's why I am here to push for Africa to take ownership, because this is a new industrial revolution where we can be at the forefront. We are leading in terms of innovation. For example, for 50 years, the US led in financial innovation. Now they're coming to look at Kenya because we're the fintech hub, we're the leaders. So let's run with it. Let's own it. In South Africa, I'm loving what they're doing with, they're having labs which are translating AI languages into local languages so that our people, when we're accessing these platforms, we have a lot of vernacular languages. Let us run with it. Let us own it. Let us set up this thing of we have to use what's in the West. Let's learn from them, come home, and become a powerhouse of our own.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I love the passion. By the way, Abdul, there's a gentleman known as Brian all the way in Malawi, and he's asking one question. Why are you not aging? Don't answer now.
I am.
So
the facade is good.
Okay. Mwende, thank you so much for your presentation and giving us a very, very broad scope on how we start appreciating CII. There are some questions that have been posed. Some of them you have answered. And one of them is talking about, for example, Pat Muthoi is talking about the issue around vendor-driven guidance and the development of our own standards for cyber protection guidelines. And also there was Brian here, and he's talking about IXP handling 70% of Kenya's internet data. Does it make it critical infrastructure? And then a question, tongue in cheek, have police soldiers been deployed to protect it? Over to you, Mwende.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very interesting questions. And thank you for all that have asked the questions. Pleasure to see you, Brian, from Malawi, and others that have asked questions. So I think there's a certain thread that is running that, you know, this infrastructure, devices, technology are coming from elsewhere apart from coming from Africa. That's the challenge. The challenge is, I'll give you my personal example that when you go to the ITU, 99% of the participants are from Asia Pacific countries. So where standardization is what, you know, and indeed the internet runs on interconnection. If the protocols do not talk to one another, if the devices do not interconnect or are not interoperable, then you don't have the infrastructure we're speaking about. So I think there's, and there has been a question on, you know, we need to be involved early. Currently, one of the sectors that are missing in my case in standardization is academia and private sector. Private sector, yes, is represented, but you'll find whether it's Cisco or Huawei or another, they are represented from Asian countries or Europe or from America, but we don't have that person who can say that this is a context in the African continent. So yes, we can, I don't know whether we can develop our own standards because standards need to ensure that systems interoperate. So standards is to ensure that you have everybody is at the same in terms of interfaces and devices or plugs or etc. And then after that, the idea is now to contextualize that standard to ensure that everybody is engaged in the process. So vendors, of course, are missing in that process because we don't really have our own manufacturing processes. Which are delivering those devices that are either protecting the critical infrastructure or are identified as critical infrastructure. So the question on the internet exchange point, as Muthoi indicated in her presentation, there is something lacking in terms of implementation of the Act. So we don't have the committee in place, we don't have a director in place. Those are the people that are supposed to come up with the procedure of, you know, these are the criteria you need to meet to be designated as a critical information infrastructure. So yes, the XP is critical because if it does go down, then we are all our, you know, internet queries are going to a place out of Africa or to Tanzania. So yes, there's need for us to develop that criteria and it's currently not in place. So I guess the PS or his representative is still here. So the idea is to fast track that, because if everything is going online and we are increasingly dependent, then designation of critical infrastructure is necessary. Whether the military is then involved is a matter of the, the country to decide. And decide, okay, yeah, we need to put, as Matheus indicated, at the port of Lamu, we need the Navy to be there because this is critical for us. So, but again, it's a country that decides what is critical and how they wish to protect it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah, thank you so much for giving us an overview of what is happening in the region. And we could see countries at various stages of implementing or rather putting a strategy around CII. And I think that will be very critical for us to march into digital transformation for the region. We talked about a SIGO digital market. From that context, there's a question that has been posed by a friend of ours, Adru Rimo, all the way from Baringo, and he's talking about training. If we look at training, perhaps all and even other areas, are we looking at perhaps coming up with some structures that we in the region can work together, be it capacity building, and perhaps even working towards developing some standards and encouraging countries to participate in standard setting so that future technologies, as Mwana De Geraini has mentioned, can also have an input and also an understanding from our region. Is there something that you are doing at IACO?
Thank you, Moriki, for that question. As I think I mentioned it in my statement, is I think one of the things we need to do is build capacity. That's the one thing that will take our region forward and also take our countries forward. It will even reduce the dependencies on foreign assistance, also enable us build solutions for Africa, because we are the ones who understand what is our problem, and build solutions tailor-made for our region. So capacity building is very important, but also capacity building can take multiple forms. There's not one size fits all. It's not a classroom setting that we're going to go for, or a coaching approach. I think we need to be very open on all forms of training or capacity building that we can harness as a region. At IACO, we try to ensure that we have a training plan for the financial year, and also trying to find the skills gaps. What are the gaps that I need, or what are the training needs? So it's a continuous process we work on, identify the gaps, identify what skills are needed, and also what trainings we can offer to the members within the region. But when it comes to training, my personal feel and drive is, let's embrace all forms of ensuring that capacity is built. Support the young entrepreneurs, support tech hubs, because in all this, if everybody is working together from different corners, we shall come in as a strong force here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see
before you go into that, I just wanted to say that in the next about 5 minutes or so, we shall finish that session and then give all the participants each about 3 minutes just to summarize the topic of today. So just see where we are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to give an opportunity to the panelists just to look at the questions that they may perhaps want to drive a bit more on the way they have responded. And as they do this, just for 1 minute, just tell us, peek into the future, look into the future. How do you see us, say Kenya and also Africa, preparing and building the CII in the region, in their own countries? So 1 minute for you, Abdul Hakim Ajijola, and also a parting shot.
Thank you. I see the future as bright. I would like to touch on the key question that I think Brian has asked, and I think this is actually very important. If something is designated as a CII, what does it imply? What does it mean? What does it convey? If you say this pen in my hand, yes, is a CII, what does it mean? If you say fiber optic cable buried in the ground along the road is CII, what does it mean? Does it mean that you have to have a policeman at every manhole or a detachment every kilometer? Does it mean that there will be tax incentives for the owners? Does it mean there will be additional procedures that, you know, for looking after it? Does it mean that you cannot put fiber optic cable and electrical cable in the same duct? You know, what is the implication? Does it mean that somebody has to build a redundancy? So for every, and I think this is important, every time government designates something as a CII, there is a penalty in the sense that there is an additional overhead that is going to be imposed. And so society needs to ask itself, who is going to foot the bill for that penalty? If it is tax incentives, the money must come from somewhere. If you have to build redundancy, the money must come from somewhere. If you have to put physical security or logical security, the money must come from somewhere. So there is a price and a penalty. What we've seen in places like Switzerland is that they try to achieve a balance where they don't unnecessarily designate things as CII because they know that you are imposing additional responsibility on the providers, and they are going to come back to government to say, we need a tax break, we need, you know, some kind of incentive, and so on and so forth. So thank you, Brian, for that question. I think that's actually, for me, the crux of the matter. What does it mean if something is designated CII? And very quickly, the GFCE is actually conducting ongoing research. And before the end of the year, I pray that we're in a position where we can share it with you and others across Africa in terms of what the good practices ought to be in terms of the responsibilities after something is designated a CII. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matheus, in just 1 minute, if there's something that has been posed and you may want to highlight on it, please go ahead. And also some thoughts. How do you see the future panning out in this area of CII?
Well, I'm also going to start by saying the future is bright because you can't get any better than that.
Thank you.
We're at a point where we're all moving forward, and this is a race. You know, Africans were known for running, especially Kenyans, for running very fast. This is a race which we also need to run fast and secure. And I'm going to pick up, there's some issues which I saw in the questions, and people were talking about innovation and how can we bring local innovation and embrace it more. We have a lot, the brightest brains, you know, there's the South Pacific, South Asian Pacific, but the other bright brains also come from Africa. You know, when it comes to innovative, in Kenya, we have young people who are making robotic arms from wood that control a hand using brainwaves. We have a lot of innovation on the continent. What we need to do is enable that. The governments need to enable that. Maybe even create sandboxes for innovation as regards CI, so critical information infrastructure, so that when innovations are, we use a sandboxing mechanism to test them and see how they work before they go full-fledged. The other thing, when we're talking about securing our critical infrastructure, people were talking about policing, you know, having military police tongue-in-cheek. I'm here to tell you, the new warrior, the new soldier is anybody with a keyboard and an internet connection. You do not need guns, you don't need nuclear codes. It could be a kid on a beach somewhere in Brazil who will bring down our entire system. You find a lot of, and I know of big corporations in the US who have had their systems infiltrated by 12-year-olds sitting in their mother's garage in Eastern Europe. So we need to now, as I think it's rather Sarah Wendell to say, think outside the box. We cannot now start looking at policing cyberspace the way we police ordinary things. This is outside the box mechanism. So if we're talking about policing it, it means and this is what I was talking about, having 24/7, 365 centers which are monitoring and securing our our critical information infrastructure online. Well, yeah, I can go on, but I think with 1 minute, let me just stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mwende? Yeah, somebody is saying here, Stephen Wanye is saying that even participation at the local level in standards development at CIIP is very poor. How do you see the future? Are we just sitting back and waiting for Asian countries to do the standards, we adopt them? How do you see the future, and what role can we play to start building that future in only 1 minute?
In only 1 minute. So yes, thank you again. Yeah, indeed. You know, there's a very big gap when you talk about participation in standardization, especially for the African continent. And you know, despite the fact, you know, that there are this, like now, the standardization process is now online. You don't have to travel to Geneva. You don't have to travel to whichever country. Still, that participation is lacking. But maybe the idea is, the challenge could be that we don't know the importance of the standard. And probably, as Hakim said, is to start early with the unborn. That when I start primary school, I am aware that standardization is important for me, for my environment, because standards, you know, it's not only for the internet, but it's in everything. And even the reference that you have given for the Kenya Bureau of Standards, it's true that, you know, the technical committees are, in terms of participation, is very, very low. So if I did start standardization at a very young age, then I know the importance of it to my day-to-day life. Then I know as I graduate onwards, and here is as everybody has said, the future is bright, is because we are so, I mean, Africa is a very, very, very young continent, and that's where our redemption will come from, if we are not already redeemed. But I think that's if we then utilize that resource, for me, I see as actually that's the critical resource that we have. When you're talking about infrastructure, yes, there are systems probably run by, you know, developed out of the country, manufactured out of the country. But what do we have? We have, you know, a mass of young people who we can build to protect or to build ourselves. So I'll end with a quote that I saw, I had written some time back. I hope it was me, but protecting critical infrastructure is like predicting an earthquake. In geology, we know where the earthquake will take place, the magnitude probably, but we don't know when it will happen. So that's in terms of critical infrastructure, that is it, when we don't know. So, you know, because, yeah, so it's to prepare ourselves for the when. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mwende. 1 minute for you, Sarah. Kenya is not an IRAD. The region is also not an IRAD. How do you see the critical infrastructure conversation going on to ensure that we realize the single digital market for the region and also for Africa, and perhaps also experiencing cyberspace benefits around the world? Sarah?
All right, thank you. I think I will say, like my other panelists have said, I think the future is bright. But in this bright future, we need to work on it right now. We have identified a lot of gaps, and we need to start the process now. And we are the pioneers. It is me, it is you, who should start these conversations. I think there's a lot of work we need to do. We need to, I think, start running right now. There's a lot of things we need to work on. And at a regional level, I think we also need to ensure that regional harmonization is achieved. But I think it's an enhancer, it's an enabler for the countries to leapfrog here. So I think for me, it's regional harmonization. Let's work on ensuring that as a region, we are speaking the same language. We are helping each other, lifting up the strong ones, are lifting up the weak ones, and we are working together, iron sharpening iron. Yeah, for me, that's what I think we should focus on. Yeah, and for CII, I think there's a great opportunity, and just such forums are discussing what it is we need to do. And already we know at country level something is happening, the future is bright. I think we just need to strengthen what it is we are working on and ensure that we are not left behind as a region, we're not left behind as countries, and work towards ensuring that our critical infrastructure is protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mine is to thank the panelists for addressing us and sharing very deeply, but also thanking the participants from around the world who are participating with their questions and also comments. Thank you very much. This was for you, and I'm very happy that the way you have responded with the questions and comments that you have given. Thank you very much. And over to you, John.
Thank you very, very much, Muriuki, and thank you, team, for everyone who has participated. If I say any more, I will be diluting this very, very interesting discussion today. I just wanted to say that before I hand over to our last team, which is the business development team, just wanted to give a very brief overview of what we're doing at the moment at the Strathmore University. We've set up, this is a very new program, and we are calling it Cyberspace Policy and Strategic Studies Program. And right now we are doing what we're calling cyberspace conversations, and we've had a few number of them. We had one last month, and we have one this month in October, as you will see from the program, which will be shown to you shortly, which will be doing an actual training, which we will invite participants. The idea of all this, as you can see, is to advance debate and knowledge on what is happening in the cyberspace. I see from all the maps, I think when they posted one earlier on, that Africa is lagging in just about everything. So there's a lot of opportunity, in my view, for us to discuss and see how this is going to come together. And I know we have begun a journey, and I want to say thank you very much, participants. We definitely will be calling on you to run this. So I'll hand over to my colleague, Lynette, to run us to the next few minutes as we close. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Lynette?
Yes. Thank you so much, John, and our panelists, being led by our keynote speaker, PS Jerome Ocheng. So I had a challenge earlier with my critical infrastructure. My camera was not working. I beg your indulgence. I think we've taken quite a bit of meat today. And I'm sure there are those of us who are seated there and wondering, that is a lot of conversation, and whether they can be able to internalize it in a day. So we've been running webinars every month. We hope to keep that up. And we've been calling them that these are cyberspace conversations. In the meantime, we've also been preparing to run our next class called Cyberspace Policy and Strategic Studies within the public sector unit. And it encompasses what you've spoken about today. And we ran the first class, as faculty lead, Mr. Sargon has said last month. We are going to be running the second class in October. I'm just trying to see, yes, in October 4th to 8th of October, it's going to be a virtual offering. That means that you can be able to join us from whichever part of the world. The last class we had government, we had guys from the finance sector, we had people from the NGO sector, from banks, from fintech, from telecom. We had representation from Somalia, from Kenya, from Ghana, from Rwanda, from Uganda. It means that this is an important conversation, not just as a nation, but as a region. And I think we've been challenged that speed is of essence because attribution is a challenge. Model will be using, quoting you very much on that. And perhaps you're thinking as, you're not thinking as at an individual level, but you're also thinking at an organizational level. And you're thinking, how can I, as maybe a bank or an organization or a government entity, bring my team for a specialized training? Because we understand, whereas you may come for a class in October, you may have something specific, a specific area that you want our faculty to help you with. So again, it's a 5-day training. We'll come and do a training needs assessment with your team, and then we'll be able to put together a training that suits your needs. If you want to contact me for the training that is in October, from the 4th of October to the 8th, or you're thinking about a custom program where you want something very specific for your team, please take my contact. It's L is for lemon, N for November, J for January, U for uniform, K for kilo, I for India at strathmore.edu. Asante sana. Over to you, John. I can see you smiling. Yes, I have learned the flying alphabet. Yes.
I like the lemon part.
Okay.
So thank you very much. So we are on time to finish at 1 o'clock. So maybe just Muriuki to say kwaheri, and then we will close.
Thank you, John. Mine again is to thank the panelists. They took a lot of time to prepare. I was touched by the passion of the presentation, very in-depth. And I'm only looking forward that we'll be meeting again Abdul Hakim Ajijola, Mwende Mutheu, and Sarah, and continue this conversation. I'm also very, very touched by the participants from around the world, the region, who are participating in this conversation. And I want to assure that this is just a start. Africa, as we saw from one of the maps here, we are behind, but this is an opportunity now for us to build from there, spring into the future, and experience the beauty of a resilient, stable cyberspace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. You can put your faces and say kwaheri. It is exactly 1 o'clock. I don't want to be in between you and our lunch. When Mudeu, Sande Sana, Sarah,
thank you, everyone.
Muriuki, and everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you.
We'll
see you in October. Some of you in October. Abdul will come to Ajijola. We'll come to Lagos or Abuja. Thank you very much, everyone.